Great. Thank you, Adam, and the team here at the Inside the Ford, Jameson Price, Gil Morales, and Grace Levitt, making our stay very lovely so far, so thanks for that. And certainly thank you to Laura Zucker and the whole team at the LA County Arts Commission for co-hosting tonight's event. We wouldn't be here without the support of our sponsors, California Community Foundation, the James Irvine Foundation, Ralph M. Parsons Foundation, Schubert Foundation, and the Biller Family Foundation. Also, our funders like to know how we're doing. So at the end of today, be sure to fill out your evaluation form. They'll be available for you as you leave. The LA Stage Talk series came about for a number of different reasons. One of the first ideas that came about was through the Ovation Rules Committee as a way to kind of lift the curtain back on process and to help voters better understand the process of how a production comes together. And so we had two volunteers from our Ovation Rules Committee, Tom Butterwitz and Sybil Wickersheimer, who are in the house today. Yeah, round of applause for them. Who said, how about if we bring a bunch of designers together and hear about process and their collaboration with the directors? And we said, absolutely, that'd be a really fantastic idea. So tonight's conversation was actually the first of the series of LA Stage Talks that we sort of came up with. But timing being what it is with everybody's schedule, this is the first time we could get everyone together. So we're happy to have them here. And I want to thank Tom and Sybil for leading the charge on this topic in particular. But overall, the umbrella idea of LA Stage Talks is, as I said, to raise the curtain, to kind of give a glimpse behind the scenes into the process of how theater gets made in this town. It's a very unique market, very unique landscape, and a very vast landscape. So we're hoping that the series kind of illuminates that process for those in the audience and for those online. We're live streaming the event. Hello, everyone. And we'll be taking questions from our online audience via live stream chat box or Twitter. Our hashtag is LA Stage Talks, so feel free to keep your phones on and tweet as you'd like. Please use the hashtag. If you have a question to ask via Twitter, we'll capture that in real time and share it with the audiences. Apparently our panelists didn't know that. We're live tweeting the event. Surprise. The next LA Stage Talk is Monday, June 11th at 7. What is artistic direction and how can you tell when someone is doing it? It's not going to be a controversial conversation at all. And I'm pleased to say it's co-hosted by the Geffen Playhouse, and we will be at the Geffen Playhouse. So if you've not made your RSVP, please do. We'll be announcing the panelists very shortly. I also want to thank Bakersman Productions for live streaming today's event, and the entire LA Stage Talk series are a great partner of ours, and we appreciate their ongoing support. And the video of the event will be made available after we make edits and get approval from every one of the panelists, because we have a feeling they might be sharing some inside secrets, maybe besmirching some characters in the community. I don't know, just saying. And as I said, we'll be taking your questions at the end. If you had sort of a clarifying question, like, oh, what did you mean by that? Sort of, I'll be moderating the conversation, let me know. Otherwise, we'll do Q&A at the end. And with that, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. I've asked them to say who they are, what they do, and their first professional production in Los Angeles. We'll start here on the end.
Hi, I'm Shirley Finney, and I'm a director. And my first production, my first professional production was a play that I produced and helped, which transitioned me, that I helped write and produce and direct, called Impressions of a Loud Reader. And it was an experience like Mickey Rooney and what's her name? Judy Garland. And I had a friend, I was trying to get this show up and went to the theaters in town, and they were like, nobody was feeling me, and so they said no. And a friend of mine had a photography studio, and he said, you can have this space at 5:30, and that's exactly what happened. He had it already, a white cyc was already there, and I put up a show, and I produced the show, and it was like at 660 Heliotrope, which it wasn't a theater then. We were the first to go in there. And I was reviewed at the Times. We were at LA, you know how they go the 10 best. And then from there, Bill Bushnell saw the show, and that's how I made my entree into the LA theater scene.
I'm Cricket Myers. I'm a sound designer. And the first professional show that I designed was a production of Dear Charlotte at the Powerhouse in Santa Monica. And I was scared out of my mind. And the way I handled that was I made like 45 copy versions of every sound cue that I possibly needed, so that I had absolutely everything available to me that I might ever possibly want. So.
My name's Elizabeth Harper, and I'm a lighting designer. And oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My name's Elizabeth Harper, and I'm a lighting designer. And my first show in LA that I designed was a concert for Kristen Chenoweth on the set of Man of La Mancha, which is in a prison. It was Tom Butterwitz's beautiful prison set.
Hi, my name is Keith Mitchell, and I'm a set designer. And I think my first production in Los Angeles, where I actually got paid, was a production of Arms in the Man. And it was in the basement of this Presbyterian church in Pasadena. Jules Aaron was the director. And I remember the LA Weekly's review of my work said it was curiously inappropriate. And I put that on my business card afterwards.
That's perfect for you. I'm Closs-Farley. I'm a costume designer, sometimes art director, mother of two. My first job as a costume designer, we were talking about it backstage, Bart and I, was with Bart at the Evidence Room, which was a theater that was built from a toy factory. Was it a toy factory first?
I think it was just a munitions storehouse.
Yeah.
Originally.
In Culver City. It was a really cool spot. And we did it in Drama Key. It was awesome.
By Racine.
That's right.
I'm Bart DeLorenzo. I'm a director. My first production was in that same venue, I think the year before, and it was an adaptation of this play by Ferdinand Bruckner. Sometimes it's called Pains of Youth or Sickness of Youth, and we did a very kind of liberal adaptation of it called Swell. The LA Weekly said it was like watching the actors was like watching rats trapped in a cage. But that was positive compared to the LA Times, which referred to it as audience torture.
We have a running theme. Prison, audience torture. You guys are in for a really good night. So I promised you guys a glimpse behind the curtain, and I wasn't kidding. We're actually going to do a real-time production meeting. We sort of split them up, kind of like a reality show. It's going to be like a Project Runway experience. And if I could ask the ladies on my right to go backstage.
All right.
Wasn't kidding. So what we've done is we've given them each a production of Hamlet and asked them to have, in real time, the first conversation between directors and designers. Sort of a glimpse at process and sort of points of view and all of that. And so with that, I'm going to toss to my director, Bart DeLorenzo.
Okay. Now, I've known about this for about 3 days. So, and I also, Hamlet is, for every director, it's a play you think about a lot in your life. And I do have a really good idea for it. But I'm afraid one of you is going to steal this really good idea. So I have another idea that I'm going to share with you. It might be good, though. I can use it to sort of flesh out the situation. Now, Anne and Keith and I have actually done production meetings together, and typically, this is not how we would do it. Typically, I would talk to each of you on the phone a little bit, and then we would probably go over Keith's house, and he'd probably already have made things and start moving them around a table. And Anne probably would come with a lot of pictures already. So this is not normally how we would do it, at least how I would do it with you. But if I were working with brand new designers, I might do it like this, because we haven't talked at all about this.
Right.
So you ready for my idea about Hamlet?
I do.
Well, it's a really good play.
Hamlet.
Yeah.
So we're set in Denmark.
Set in Denmark, melancholy Dane. So, I've seen a lot of Hamlets, and the reason I haven't done a Hamlet is because you never get a break to do a Hamlet. As soon as you want to do one, someone else just opens one.
That's true.
My version of it at this moment, I think would be about, I want to set it in a theater. And I want to use all the theatrical trappings of it. Because what interests me at the moment about the play is it's about acting, about whether someone should act or not act. And so I wanted to, and we have the players arrive, I want to really explore the theatrical metaphor of the piece. And so I was really interested in the idea of the stage. And I kept thinking of, the play's about revenge, and then the revenge that sort of turns wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think that the dramatic moment it turns wrong, this is my interpretation, is when he kills Polonius. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly blood is shed. And maybe if we could do something where we use the trappings of the stage. And I love like a red curtain. I love the sense of the backstage. If at that point in the play, maybe we become less theatrical, and maybe that the production becomes more real in some sense. And I don't know what that means if we want to,
Like real in present times, or real?
That's my question. Or if we want to just start to add more detail to the production, or if we want to suddenly start bringing in some, Jacobean clothes, or I don't really know about that aspect of the play yet. But I thought we could do it really simple. So what I sometimes do is, I wouldn't do it with you guys, but if I were working with sort of designers I don't know or newer designers, I might bring in. I religiously, if you come to my house and look underneath things, you may find a lot of manila folders that are just filled with pictures. I just keep every picture that interests me, and I just throw them in. I don't organize them because I think the random nature is where I get all the good ideas. The wrong ideas are sometimes the best ideas, and so I looked through that this afternoon. This is my preparation.
Okay.
And I just took out a bunch of, not too many, but a few pictures that I thought, there's something about this that is interesting to me, and so we could, in theory, have a conversation. And a lot of it just has to do with colors, A lot of my pictures come from the New Yorker magazine, which is my favorite magazine. And I just think the photographs are so beautiful in it, always. So I thought I would just, I don't know, maybe should we pretend to sort of I'll pass them like this, so you can sort of see, and I don't even know why I chose these certain ones.
I love this palette right away.
Yeah, it's very nuclear, which I like.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, and lone
Classic
figures.
you.
This is actually a picture that I've saved, I don't know, it's of Jude Law in Hamlet, which is weird that I have it.
Jude Law always works.
I love this with all the words, and maybe there's something to do with that could be interesting.
You see any projection happening?
It could be. This picture I just loved of this angry ocean, and I started thinking about the Sea of Troubles.
Oh, that's sweet.
That I just thought was sort of interesting.
Beautiful.
I don't know how to deal with
There's
that.
a lot of black and white here. Color-wise, do you see it as being sort of stark?
I see it dark, but not black.
I like the vintage aspect of what you're saying.
For sure,
I mean,
the
a lot of
vintage.
this is like very...
And I was drawn to
century? Is it how far?
No, I was thinking that we would start modern, but maybe we would go somewhere else.
Okay.
As I said, after the death of
I'm
Polonius.
just looking at this picture that Anne has up, and it's almost, what is that? It's not Barrymore or something. But
No,
it's
it's Edwin Booth
Edwin Booth.
in 1870.
Here's a more modern picture.
I haven't worked with you before. I like there's something about you when you choose material, from my perspective.
Well, I chose Hamlet.
As a designer.
I like this guy's shaved head.
Yeah, shaved head's
Bart has this a really great relationship to lighting and his tones. And your tones, whether it be cool or smooth or however you want to describe it, it's always like something for me attracts our dialogue. And he's really interested in high fashion. And when you pull things out of magazines, you always what you capture is something that is incredibly present but rooted in the past. And his photographs are always like that. Something that says nothing but gives you an essence that is provocative, that it's timeless. So there's this timeless sensibility about your work.
This is interesting because it's almost like a theatrical
Like a
curtain.
curtain.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous.
And using something that is found in the theater that would give you the location. I like that aesthetic, and that's something that I've seen.
And I do love a bare stage, and I have a personal dislike of levels. I just always think that, because where in the world do you have levels?
You know, I like that. That looks
Really?
like paper.
I'm really thinking like a second story of some sort of like a.
Well, that's
a
fine.
balustrade or
I just don't
something.
I hate that when you step up 1 foot to
Oh,
like
okay,
that fake
okay.
level that
Yeah.
doesn't exist in the
Do you
world.
seem like ramparts kind of?
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
some
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of-
I think I always think
Height.
when you're doing a Shakespeare play,
Yeah, the red
to
really
address
speaking to me.
the theater of his time with the 2 levels.
Have you seen Slings and Arrows?
Yes.
Can we have some sheep? Can we have some bleeding sheep?
I just had to say it out loud because
Okay.
I mean, if there was ever a combination
love
of
these.
Hamlet on cinema with set on a stage that was beautifully portrayed, that's a good reference.
I love the color of
Similar.
that too.
No, that was good.
I love just the curtain. I just have 2 more
Is
pictures.
Salma Hayek?
Yeah.
Is she going to be in the
Like
show?
this faded red.
trying-
It's really
We're
interesting.
negotiating with her agent. It's
Yeah,
not
right.
going well.
Can we
She
have a
lives in
trap
LA
door?
sometimes.
A trapdoor, definitely.
I need a trap door.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, I was
Just
also
LA.
thinking that if we start with the bare
Just kind of
stage,
carny thing.
is that
No, this is
maybe
great.
maybe when we, as the play evolves, because the play seems so much about death, if we get to, I mean, it arrives at that graveyard, maybe
Right.
there's something fun with dirt on the floor as
That's
well.
fun.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Can we
What's
do
a-
puppets?
An Avedon.
Why not puppets? How about puppets? Life-size puppets?
He does really
I don't
good
think
puppets.
so. I'm not thinking that so much. Anyway, those are some
cool.
images.
I like this too. That's very cool.
Yeah, I like the colors of it, and I like the sheen of it, for
I
some
like
reason.
the sort of empty warehouse space with all of this clutter in it, and
Yeah, because I thought, because
Architecture.
theaters sometimes have all that stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
I like the shadows and all.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice.
So at this point, usually, I've done my thing, and then they come back at me. And what's great about these two, having worked with them before, is they save me from my taste, you know? Because, you know, you're stuck with your own taste, and so it's always a concern that all your shows are going to be alike because they're your taste. And then secondly, that all your shows, that one show will be, because this is a criticism I often have when I watch a show, is that it's the same, every scene is the same, because the director likes this. And it's like, oh, good, we have another serving of chocolate mousse. Oh, and another chocolate mousse scene, you know? And it's like, I love chocolate mousse as much as anybody. But I think it's so important that the design tells the story and doesn't like interpret the play throughout or interpret the play each scene. So that's always something that I always look for, is like a location for the play, or something that can transform and tell a story,
Okay.
both in set and costumes.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
So let's say, who are our players and what level of theater are we presenting this show on?
This is huge budget.
is it a proscenium stage, or we have flat
So what theater in LA are we
I think
at?
it's a proscenium stage, and I think there's lots of a nice fly gallery.
Excellent.
I always like a
Okay.
nice fly gallery,
All
Okay.
right.
and trapdoors.
How many players?
Wonderful.
I think we should do it. I don't think we should do doubling. I think we should do it whatever the regular amount is. 15
Okay.
people. I don't know how many Hamlet is.
And what's your budget?
It's good.
And what does that mean? You already said simple to me, which is already like,
Well, no, it can be,
everywhere.
but budget is, I don't think, is our factor today.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
Choose your own budget.
That's right.
I think it's a nice theater. We can do something.
All right.
They have stock to pull from.
They have stock to pull from.
Yeah, okay.
Forget it. You can do
Okay.
anything. Okay.
So what do you think, Keith?
I'm totally attracted to these two kind of proposed images. One of them is a picture of all of this sort of
Claptrap.
Vintage pieces.
claptrap vintage pieces from France, and then there's this minimalistic, very modern image, which is sort of haunting and stark at the same time. And
What?
Yeah, one's like really saturated.
I like this one
Yeah.
too. I like
Yeah.
the vintage, the verbiage.
Well, that
we've
looked
got.
like just a bunch of flats, like leaning against a wall, which I always think is interesting.
I like
Yeah,
the
I
open
did too.
skylight too.
the skylight's
there is-
very interesting.
There is
as
something
well.
fun about transforming a space too, with there's like.
It looks like a props closet. It's basically like a set props closet.
But you could also just pull out something to create a scene in a really sort of theatrical way.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
which might be kind of
It's
fun.
maybe like pulling things out and reappropriating
Right.
stuff to create.
And then maybe at some
Whatever.
point the play just stops doing that. You
Yes.
know, and we're stuck
And
with
maybe it goes
this
into-
one space, and as Hamlet sort of starts to really confront death, and and the end of his
I'm really
journey.
attracted to the skylight too, and I'm thinking, is there a sense of sky and openness to this space as
Well,
well?
what's interesting about that is there's sky, but it's almost like the sky's in prison, you know, against the greenhouse
It
kind
also
of
gives you
thing.
an opportunity that if, all these pieces, I just like, if we were gonna use this, if they said this is your junk and then make your show,
Right.
things aren't what they are yet.
Right.
And you could build the rooms from what was in the room, even though right now it just looks like a set had been taken down and getting ready to take outside to the lot, right?
Right.
And, but here, then it gives you options to change
Yeah.
locations and pull it out and create worlds as you go and put it back,
Right.
And yet it's
Kind of
not
nice,
like bringing
like a
in
puzzle
rooms, you know, which
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do.
which is nice. And I always like, using things in a room as costume pieces,
Yeah.
if they're there.
Do you see
It's
this
kinda
as a costume rack kind of thing on stage where there's
Well, that would be so
Changes
useful.
happening
I just think
on
that's
stage.
such a cliche, you know, the costume rack sitting on the side.
Right.
I just hate that.
I do
you've
too.
done with that? Okay, cool.
I've done that. Everyone does
Yeah.
that,
Good.
you know. But I like the idea of it. It's handy. So maybe there's another way to.
Is there stuff hidden back in these cubbies, or is it
Yeah, maybe there's some other way to do that conceit.
magic boxes kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's good.
Yeah, I like simple costuming too, just having things appear to be from the period but modern.
Right. Like a
Yeah.
come des garçons kind of thing. Or, yeah.
So the whole thing basically has a modern edge to it.
I think so. Yeah.
Right.
But then maybe we go earlier when we shed some blood in the play. Maybe then we start going on a journey backwards.
What I really am curious about is lighting, and I guess one of the reasons I like this piece is that it just feels so modern to me, and that maybe there's a modern aspect to some
Well, I
lighting
love how
elements.
saturated it is. And maybe there's something to do with
Yeah,
like
exactly.
strip lights on the stage that we could then move around with some saturated colors. Or maybe we even have like one of those great big old lights on, you know, that you roll around the stage and we sort of shape the scenes with the light rather than bringing too much junk on.
Okay.
You know?
I'm thinking about those light installations where they do like layers of scrim, and sometimes they have projection and they have
yeah.
this crazy sense of depth, and,
Yeah.
and there's like a
Yeah.
ghost and all of that.
Oh,
and
the
just, like,
ghost of that.
Sort of having some sort of ghostly aspect.
Well, there's those like Rauschenberg pieces, the hoarfrost pieces where there's the projections on the gauze. That could be
Yeah.
sort of interesting,
Yeah,
you know,
I'm
with the
really
layers of
kind of
gauze.
attracted to translucency and
Fog.
elements.
The fog is the
The
ghost.
fog,
Yeah.
yeah. I want no fog in the production though.
What?
Because I think it's illegal, and also it's just like such a cliche.
I like the projection aspect of it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, maybe
Even
there's
on
a way
the
to use
clothes.
projection where it's not
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
projection.
Well, projecting onto scrim, layers of scrim, that is more interesting to me. And I love the idea of that sea that's behind everything.
I
You
do
know,
too.
I really like that picture.
I like the ocean. The ocean really is compelling,
Yeah.
especially in this.
Why'd you
piece.
take that metaphor in the play about the Sea of Troubles? It's just
Well.
such a profound one.
And, that's the mode of travel, right? I mean,
Yeah, they
in
go-
this,
they-
in this
yeah,
time
they
period.
go on the
this is
boat to
something that
England,
You
yeah.
can't do successfully on stage, but to give that sort of feeling would be awesome. Yeah.
Are we aware of any of the rigging and maybe the ropes and things? Sorry.
It's all good.
I'm thinking,
Do you want to see,
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think all that stuff could be raw. I mean, if we're gonna go
Right.
this raw, then
Yeah.
you just bring in all your raw
Bring in some
materials.
steel and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Great. Okay.
absolutely.
So make a fake theater within our real theater.
Yeah.
Great.
I would love
Okay.
to use that kind of like, if you're gonna
And
go
you
for
can
rope,
respond.
yeah, I mean, I'd
Okay.
rather use some of those elements as belts and
Okay, so there's
that
like a
sort of
found
thing. So we
object
just
and-
have, well, not necessarily.
As long as it doesn't get too cute, you
Hot
know,
with this
yeah.
one, it's
We
gonna be
won't
hot.
get
No one wears a
What's
pot on their
the-
head, you know what I mean?
Sexy. Yeah, rope is
That's a
totally
good place to
sexy
start,
for
Team
a-
One. No pots on the head. Great.
That's one of the rules.
That's been done.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Can we sit here because now we don't need to be in
I
isolation.
think they might fill on the spot.
Really?
So if you guys just step up.
We won't judge them.
We won't. We'll be
Lies.
okay. Do we vote afterwards like American Idol?
Oh my God. Text your votes to lastagetimes.com. Brought to you by water. Is this my interpretive dance part? This one-
Are we in the same pod?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
All right.
So,
Huh?
It's a stereo mic, so you actually don't want it right in front of her. You want to leave it right
I did the wrong thing.
we'll defer to the sound designer
So-
on that.
Can we do 3 on a mic, like 3 on a match?
Yeah.
So, well, this is perfect because we look like we're a singing group.
I will not be singing.
Which is great because it goes into now, I'm segueing into my, my concept of Hamlet. Do we all know their departments?
Yeah.
Okay, so you notice I don't have my set designer and I don't have my costume designer, and it's okay. So but here's what I would say here's the concept. I like working, and I think that there's one of the things about Hamlet, it's so open. Okay, it's so open, you can do anything. So I said, great. So I can use my mad mind to figure out what I wanted to do. So I decided that I would borrow from 2 versions, the Alexander Dumas version and this opera. And the one thing I liked was, I think for me that Hamlet, I like the idea that he is going through a loss of his father. So he's taking a meta journey. So for my concept, I went, okay, Hamlet is dealing with the 5 stages of how to survive the loss of a loved one. Okay, so we're going to look, for me, I want to look at his inner journey, what that is. And so reason why I took the Dumas version is because Hamlet lives at the end. And if we look at the 5 stages and this is really important because we're looking at it also in the chakras, because part of the chakras are going to be our color palette for my costume designer and my lighting designer and my sound, okay? Because we're all dealing with the tonality and the music. I want to set Hamlet as in a music production, like a music studio, a sound stage, music studio. And of course, Hamlet, the prince, is a singer. And I'm using the players, okay, so we're not gonna start off with the gravediggers. We're gonna start off part of that dream, that inner journey, because they're all archetypical characters within emotional sides of who he is. I wanna use Hamlet's group, the players, who are singers and hip hop players, dancers. So they are going to be woven in this journey as part of the group. And I want to explore the urban inner journey of his life. And some of the impulses that came with me was that with the set, I would love for it to be a multi-level with some iconic symbols and have it be like a reflective, because we want to heighten the spiritual part of his journey. We want to heighten this inner world, his journey that he's taking. I'm also thinking that I would love Hamlet to be played, Hamlet's ghost and Hamlet to be played by the same actor. So part of that would be if we could, in this reflective space with mirrors and I don't know, I'm gonna, just as I talk, I wanna find out what your impulses are. That we might want to film the actor playing Daddy, right? And then we would project his image to really, again, heighten that spiritual journey that he's taking. Let me see, what else? Oh, because it's in a musical realm, I'm thinking a cappella with acoustic sound instruments because there's certain, music is the science of harmony. So I want to explore in terms of when we go through, like we were talking about their 5, how many monologues in Hamlet? All right, you guys. We said 5. I think there's
5 or 6. Yeah, five big ones by Hamlet.
6 total, okay. So we were looking at the number 6. 6 is the working out of a condition. Hey! Okay, I love that. Okay, so, and each of those chakras has a sound that I think we could explore, and that would be really great. And my players, like when when he's having his toast in the singing, would be like a dance, you know how the crumping and the dance off, as they explore the fight sequence. And he appears 3 times in this play, at the beginning, just before he wants to kill Ophelia, and at the end. Okay. All right, go girls.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, the first thing that strikes me is like with the journey, and since it is kind of a very urban and percussive thing, that maybe the progression of the music is really important. And it's like, I wonder if at the beginning of the show, it's not as, it's more disjointed, and that it begins to meld, it becomes to come together by the end, that it begins to have more of a melody at the end.
Nice.
As opposed to, you know, something that's much more kind of chaotic
Yes,
at the beginning.
yes, I like that.
And just kind of find those steps through his journey when things begin to gel for him.
And he gets
when things
completed.
Come together, yeah.
I like that a lot.
One of the things that jumped out for me was talking about the reflective spaces and the reflectivity.
Wait a minute, can we?
Not supposed to touch
We're
it.
not supposed to touch it. Come close, closer.
They're lifting the levels.
Ooh, wah, ooh, wah.
This side. You're gonna go on that
All
side.
right, there you go. So I'm good now?
Yes.
I'm good, okay.
Are we good?
The reflective spaces were interesting for me to hear you talk about. And I was thinking about the glass inside a recording studio. And when you were saying projections, which I think would be a great addition to lighting in the process, I think it would be fun to look at integrating those in a really seamless way, so that spaces that you don't think of as a possible projection surface can materialize as a projection surface, and it becomes that inner the inner thought that you're talking about. And I also like in Hamlet the amount of uncertainty.
Yes.
And I think that maybe blurring the lines between what is projection and what is a projected surface, and when can that appear, and sort of having the projection and lighting work in ways that are maybe unexpected, and trying to surprise the audience with what things can become.
Absolutely.
Once we take them for a piece of a sound studio.
Right. And when you were saying that, I was thinking it does not necessarily, because it is stream of consciousness, it's the way we're going to deal with it, right? And it's in, so that whatever these set designer, your set pieces are, whatever these set pieces are, like if we did have the sound section, maybe that goes away, you know, so that there's the fluidity of movement that then comes in when we need for him to, or them to be, you know, in and out, so that these things are slowly moving as he's moving through his different dilemmas. And when we looking at the 5 stages of, there's the denial, there's, and I'm not saying these in order, there's denial, there's anger, there is bargaining, there's depression, and then there's acceptance. And you know that I'm looking at you, huh? We read the same book. And not in that order. And I think when we look at Hamlet, we're really looking at that. And when I was reading his history, he had lost a son at the time that he was really writing this. So that's what, when I read that, I went, oh, I know what you were really doing. So he was working out number 6, his condition.
I think we can use to, like you talk about movement and changing the room and making things seem like different things. I think sound can really do that too, and where sound comes from, you know, and it's like when the sound, you know, comes from the deck, you can add a lot of tonal sounds. You can change the shape of the room and the way the room sounds, especially if it's a recording studio.
Yeah.
There can be microphones everywhere.
Absolutely.
So suddenly the space feels cavernous because the microphones are creating an echo through the room. Or if it's a private, intimate moment, you know, the room can go dead with no reflection at all. And, you know, his headphones, he's in his own world, because headphones are very isolating. And it's, you know, and it can kind of use sound to make the room feel different too, as his feelings change.
I like that. I like that.
And I think there's actually room for using the headphones to create more ambiguity about what, because we don't know what he's hearing through that.
Right.
We can maybe guess at it or let the audience in on it sometimes, or maybe it's interrupted, but I think that we can play with the idea of headphones and sort of the mystery of what's happening behind there.
Yeah.
Wow.
What's going on in his head?
And can you talk to me about, I don't know much about chakras.
Oh,
Can you talk to me about chakras?
oh okay.
Because I think
Maybe
that
I'll send that to you in my director's packet.
Stage management has taken the note.
Yes, stage manager. No, right. Chakras. If we look at that, we're all energy. Everything on the planet is energy. And there are tonalities within your body to keep you in balance, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And each chakra represents, like, your first chakra, okay, it's just below your solar plexus, and that's red. Oh, that was one of the things. I'm deviating because I remember I told you I talk in fragments and non sequiturs. But, you know, a woman's way is circular. So, she likes that. She likes that. So, what I was going to say in terms of that palette, when we're looking at the journey and arcing his character, I also want to, in that, I think lighting is also going to be, because I love the idea. I'm going to go back to your question, but I love light. You know, I love, because thank you. Because for me, the work that I do is sound, and light is important for us viscerally. Because it's one thing for it to be on page, but when we're connecting spirit bearing witness to spirit here, it's very important that, and the element of emotion and light, I love you. You know what I'm saying? And sound. So that's why I said it's important that when we look at with the color palette, that we think of that also in the light of what are the textures and colors that it just would be kind of, the audience probably wouldn't notice how they're being affected. So that's why. So energetically, like first chakra is about family and sexuality. And so if we were starting off, I would say, maybe it is in the reds. You know, maybe that first opening, as I would call the prologue, with the dancers foreshadowing with the crumping and all of that, the fighting and the tension point representing that. Maybe we have that with textures and it's dark and it's murky as he's going through the unconscious waters of his plight. So we would look at, then the next chakra is orange, and then there's the red. You know, we go through all of them, and each one has an energy. The heart space, in your mental, your physical, and your spiritual. But I'll send you a packet that will, and if this is, and if you agree and you think this is something interesting that you would want to work on, then we can explore that more. But I'll send you both of you the packet about this definition.
I look forward to the packet. But what I took from that is these opportunities to let dance bring in some of the sort of chakra colors in a more abstract way.
Absolutely.
And then, again, you have this option of projection, and maybe it's probably a little literal to do all the time, but maybe there are points when the body becomes a projection surface. And
Love that.
For both regular projection, I mean, you can think of regular projection and lighting as one and the same. We both emit light. They just have more capabilities than your standard theatrical light.
right.
But maybe we can project onto the bodies of the actors.
I like that a lot.
To have that moment and to secure that.
And where we
concept.
want to have it, because you don't want to, see, what
Right.
I also know
And-
is we don't want to overuse it because we get in trouble in tech.
Depends on the person doing it.
I know, but you don't, it's one of those things, we want to pick those like you said, the element of surprise, because we never want them to catch
To
up.
expect it.
Absolutely.
And then once you've established it, you can morph it or leave it alone for a while. But it might be something to play with.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Hamlet Team 2.
Go girls! Go girls! Can we go off the stage? Oh, we can stay?
No, we're done with the reality show portion of the evening. Again, text your votes to LA Stage Time stuff.
See, we touched it.
Now you're going to want to be, now I want to.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So, right, the idea of that was to present a little bit of real-time process. I'd love to hear from each of you what your ideal process is in collaborating with your fellow designers, with your director, with the production team. And I'll let anybody start on that. So, ideal process in collaborating.
I like this. I think we had talked about that earlier. And the way the world works now, you don't have that very often. But I love maybe the first phone call before we meet, as you know, you're seeing what the chemistry is. But I like having my designers in the same room because this riffing, I love the riffing. Because I may say, okay, we're talking fusion, what does that look like just now? And you go, oh, and maybe da-ba-da-ba-da, and you go, oh yeah, that we could do that. And I go, wow. So I like, the ultimate for me is having all the designers in the room and seeing what kind of music that we can make together.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think what happens, it depends on what level of theater that you're working at and what kind of money is behind a project. And there are two things that stick out for me that have made it much difficult to have an artistic conversation. One is email. We've now become so used to talking over email that we are forgetting that we're not having conversations. And as much as email has been awesome in that way, where it's giving me a lot of time at home to deal with problems instead of in person, and sometimes that can be a problem too, but there is a disconnect in relationships that are happening in shows and because of email. And all of a sudden we're creating ourselves as cogs in a show instead of engaging in those relationships. So, but that all depends on what kind of show. I actually did a very large corporate project all by email and Skype meetings. I did the Pee Wee Herman show. A lot of our pre-meetings all happened outside the room, and we met once before we put that show on. So there are things like that that I think deter us from actually creating a creative process. And the other one is the email. The email is number one, and I think I forgot number two. I'll come back to it because I was so engaged in the email conversation.
But while you were saying that, I was thinking that you were talking about Skype. The first time we'd had the conference call and telephone, but when the advent of the Skype world is when I did the opera, Winnie the Opera. And I had a designer in London, and I had a designer in South Africa, and one in New York. We were all over. And so we had the in-room conversations on Skype, but we'd have to say, okay, you're 9 hours ahead and you're 3 here, so here's the time, and I'll call and do all of that. And so I didn't have a first in-room until I got there, maybe 6.
Oh, I'm not dissing Skype. Skype's a whole other ballgame.
Right.
Because
Well, I was
Skype,
gonna
you
say-
are having a
I was
visual
going to say
conversation.
Skype is better than email because
That's
it is
right.
a live time conversation.
Skype's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's so, even in the city, if we can't get together in the city, because Santa Monica to me is the same as France. So, I'm just telling you. So, I mean, if you're going to gauge that, you're like, that's That's true. So, but Skype is a whole other ballgame. Sybil out there and I worked on a project where we did do that Skype, and we had these amazing meetings post 9:30 at night where we could deflate from the day and engage. And you would never call a meeting at 9 o'clock at night. But what we did at the time where we all agreed that we would have energy for this project, and that is brilliant. That's technology at its best. The only thing I can say about emails replaced the phone, and that is just another conversation, and we forget that tone. It's mostly tone.
No, absolutely.
Some people write emails in the tone of themselves and have learned to become writers for their voice, and other people have not. So when you mix business practices and people who are used to being able to develop a business voice on email, and others who don't. So it's tricky. It's still, email is still growing in that kind of ethic, I think. The other thing I was going to talk about, I keep forgetting what I was going to talk about with the other thing. Darn it.
Well, I think we all like to be in the room, especially when you, after this intro stage, when you get to the model. And a model is so much the best way to start playing around. And then everyone can start to basically play dollhouse, and you start to move things around, and it's great. I also love when designers that you have a long history with, like, you and I go back, but, and Keith and I have done several projects. I've done things with you guys too, but not quite as many.
And you were there, and you were there.
I know, exactly. But when you have a rich history with people, it makes a huge difference. But I think also in that, if you have a lot of history, it's also good to have someone brand new in there, because then you can see your own bad habits through some fresh eyes.
What does that look like?
What does what look like?
The bad habits?
No, you were saying, I know, like everybody, with the collaboration, and you want to work with people that you worked with before, especially me, because my language. So it's about, you have a shorthand with the people that you've worked with before. But I just wanted to know when the new person enters the room and the bad habits, I said, what does that look like? Can you elaborate?
I don't think they feel like a new person, because we're always new to the project, I mean, I always feel like that, even as a director, is I am so not the expert on the play. We're all students to each new work, and so we're all like trying to come up with the best idea. So I don't think that person usually feels like, though occasionally I'll say, like, that hat that we used on that other show, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I think we're all new. We're all new.
I was going to say, I like having someone that I've never worked with before, just because I think it shakes up the dynamic a little bit and adds a new, if it's a director that I've worked with 1,000 times, it's like we might have a language that we're very comfortable with, but to have a new person in the room who's got a completely different language, I think shakes us up and makes us kind of reevaluate the words we're using, and it's like, do these same words mean the same thing in different projects, and kind of force us to change the way we talk about something, because this other person brings something new to it, and I think it always makes things more interesting for me. So. And
you get outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of pushes, it challenges you to talk about things in a different way, and it's like I think all of us have our own languages. We have ways of phrasing things, and it's always fun at that first meeting to kind of figure out what the other key words are, what the words that people like to use. It's like you kept talking about movement, you kept talking about journey. It's like those are the things that jumped out at me, and those are the things that throughout my process I'm going to keep repeating, and making sure that your idea of journey is my idea of journey.
Nice,
nice,
yeah.
So. And that's what I was going to say, the thing that eluded me, and I'm like going to say it now before I lose it.
Hurry.
But which is, for me as a designer into the process, and this also talks about there are many different levels of theater in Los Angeles, from your 40-seat house to your event to your, your 1,700-seat house. So depending on where you're at, whether or not, when you build your process nowadays, you get a first meet, and then you go off. You have the conversation on the phone, you meet one time, and you go design the play. And when you're in college and you're learning how to build a show, you have a limitless time in the design process to come up with something. Now, we've all edited it. everything's gotten edited down in that design process. And what I miss oftentimes is like a session, like just a one day where we do more than 4 or 5 hours of just knee-deep digging into our possibilities in the design aspect. And that doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if it's for time or whatnot, but...
Yeah, like Bart bringing out those photos. I mean, I really enjoy doing stuff like that, but I never get to do that hardly anymore.
Generally,
yeah.
So this big
luxurious.
explosive palette that you dream of in your professional life generally gets edited down, and that's for in film and television and commercials and other aspects that I work in, that's also happening. So there's a lot of dialogue that goes missing from set and setting and other possibilities. So those things have really gotten edited down.
Well, sometimes when you work on a really small production, where you have some time, well, that can be really exciting.
Yeah.
Because you can start to work on and have an idea for a set, and then you start to stage with this idea of the set. And then, wait a second, let's change our idea, as opposed to when you're working in a regional theater and it's too late, The set has been designed. Well, there's some jiggering, but it's not quite the same. Yeah.
So those are things that I often miss about that opportunity when I'm alone in my room coming up with big ideas, and not being able to share them because they're too late in the process.
Right. Yeah.
So for my other secret show of the show that I'm doing,
Okay.
so that'll be coming.
Right.
I'd love it if each of you could share an anecdote of a collaboration that was particularly successful, and sort of what the elements were about the collaboration that made it a success for you.
I was lucky enough to be a part of this program called PLAY that CTG did for a while, and I worked on a project with a writer and a director, Corey Madden and Laurel Mead, and we had an amazing process of having a year to develop this show and having a series of workshops with actors and getting in for like a week and playing with 2 actors and just exploring the whole world of the play together. And we did a piece called Rock, Paper, Scissors. And it was one of the first chances that I got to kind of play with actors and think about design from a writer's perspective. And I think it was one of those processes that the actors had to be able to do all of the magic that happened on the stage. So we had to find out what they could do and what you could do with paper, and it was such a fun show to work on. And I kind of feel like we had to start with the end of the show. We knew it had to have a big ending, and it had to be this magic forest, and then we had to reverse engineer it to the point where it was just stacks of paper and paper walls and flat and boring and lifeless. So I think that was a pretty successful collaboration.
I had a very similar experience on 20th Century Way at Boston Court, which was another 2-actor show, and we had the playwright in the room with us. Tom Jacobson was incredible. And it was great because what we did was we started building sort of a machine that accommodated the show that the actors were always running. And to have Tom's sort of reaction in real time, and there were a lot of ideas. Once we built the machine, which was sort of this combination of just practicals, a ghost light, and an empty room, once that machine was, and a rack of costumes, once that machine was in place, they could do things, and we threw a lot of things out. And it was the first time that, and this is how I prefer to work, but time always doesn't allow, that tech wasn't a race to get to the end product. It was something that we were constantly exploring and working through, and that was our time to work through it. I feel like a lot of times tech is like the time to execute your plan, because we have the plan and now it's time to do it. And sometimes you get there and the plan just maybe isn't as great as it could be, or maybe it doesn't work. And this process allowed for that. And it allowed us to throw out ideas and edit down to our very best ones.
I think for me, it was Winnie the Opera. It was a 2-year project. I went to South Africa 3 times, one for research where I walked her walk in everywhere, and Soweto, the village, and then I worked, it was a multimedia, so I was plugged into every part of me, which was my film and television and my stage, because we had to create this world for her, the A story, the B story. The A story was the last day of the Truth and Reconciliation, where she apologized to the nation, and then the other was, again, you know me, inner journey. I'm into this inner journey. I want to leave the planet clean. So, but it was wonderful because of the designers. I was the outsider, and everyone else was South African. You know, even but the world, and we had the time. It's like film, pre-production. I call it the pre-production. We had time to massage story and ideas and the world and the music and workshopping. I got to go and workshop with real actors before I had the opera singers to see what the heart of the piece was. So for me, that was, I came home and went, I want more. You know, more Auntie M. But yeah, the designers, the creative exploration, the pre-production, and the team, the whole team. Because for some, it was the first time they were ever in the State Theater. You know, so it was a major historical event that took place.
I would say probably Bengal Tiger, all 3 productions of it, but what made it such a fabulous collaboration is that the first conversation with the director and the composer, the director, Moises, expressed an interest in having a lot of kind of almost underscoring or tonal sounds that reflected the energy coming out of the characters, their tension, their fears, their decisions. And for me, it was really important for that energy to come from the stage, which is not where most theaters are built for the sound to come from the proscenium. And for me, it was really important that if they were to be a reflection of the cast, of the actors, of the characters, then it needed to come from them. So after having this conversation with the director, I had to go back to the scenic designer and say, I need a lot of speakers on your deck. And I need places to put them. And then, you know, during the tech process, it was working with the lighting designer and kind of sculpting these moments. That it was like, you know, I'm doing something, you know, there's a dramatic shift in this character's mental state. And I've made this big change in sound, and it seems like it's hanging out there by itself. And so the lighting would also then take a big shift, and we'd move together. And the other designers, as well as Moises, you know, we would spend 20, 30 minutes saying, should this be a 4-second shift or a 5-second shift, or should we shift in 2 parts, or should we, and being given the time to kind of play so that the actors moved in time with the lights and with the sound, and also working with the composer who would give me everything she created in separate stems, so that when the director says, I need something a little bit differently here, she and I could take them apart and build something new from the pieces, or take one element out, or grab an element from somewhere else and dump it in here, because we were completely flexible in the space. And so when the actor found a new motivation or found a new emotion, we could change and reflect right with him. And then being given the opportunity to do the show multiple times and see how the cast grew with the show, how the script changed, because again, the playwright was in the room, things were changing, and then how we could shift live with them was pretty incredible.
I think I just want to throw out too that I feel like a thread through all of this is during tech, when you're, to go back to what I was talking about a little bit before, when you're just trying to, there's this idea of getting through the show, but when you have this many parts, taking a note on it and just plowing through doesn't actually help at some point. We all have to be there and try it and evaluate. And that process of evaluation, the stuff you throw out is just as important as the stuff you keep. And if you just go with the thing that you think will work, it just never comes together. And that's why these processes were special.
I want to speak to that because over the years, one of the things, because I've heard that from designers, I like to have my show in before we start tech. But I always say to my designers, come during the rehearsals. Mm-hmm. If you can come into my room and we're feeding with the sound, so we kind of know if as we have in our discussion, bring me things. Let me play in them during the rehearsals so that we won't have that during tech. Yeah. Because, the creative process in itself has its tension point without us trying to get more on. So my keyword is ease and grace. So I love that. And one of the things we were talking about when I talk to designers and costumes and say, we're in process, and the actors are going to come in. We're going to have our creative meeting, in terms of the production. Now the actors are going to come in, so we're going to have to leave a little room, especially me and the costume designer, and the set. In a way, we were talking about when is that set, gets massaged, but leave a little room for their creativity because they're going to come in and they're going to say, oh, I feel my character this, and I need blah, 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 blah. So as we are framing, but I also know we have a deadline. We have a deadline, and so we know when to stop processing in terms of that. But in that beginning, to leave room for their creativity to enhance the production, because the production is the star and it's first.
Yeah. And I think it's great to feather in things like that in rehearsal. I'm a huge fan of that.
I need that.
Just to make sure you're on the same page and check in with something concrete, not just words, because we were talking about words have so many meanings.
Yeah.
But yeah, to allow for that act, because once we're not all there until we're all there.
I think, for me, I think I was really schooled on Toy Story, the musical, for the Disney Cruise Lines. I worked on that with Sybil Wickersheimer, who did the sets. It was a really large project, obviously. It's Toy Story, and we all know what Toy Story looks like, and what that would mean to bring an animated character that looks like the animated character on stage. That was one of the largest collaborative design shows I've ever done and will ever do, and it took 10 years of my life in full. I was the first person onto that project. I did hundreds of designs. I got the luxury, because it's Disney, to be able to dream big, what that means. And you don't get that very often. I got to dream big, not knowing, and this is something that's backwards for me, because I like to build. I construct my own clothes. I sew my own clothes. I do my own work. This is a show where I could not do my own work. I had to hire other people, and I had to create a language for myself to delegate out what I mean. And that was a big challenge for me, because I am self-taught. And this was a job where I needed to arrive as a designer, and I felt like that show taught me how to do that. But I got the luxury of having to be egoless and understand what it means to collaborate, to find the product that you're dreaming of. And I had to, I have characters that are as big as cars. I have a potato and a slinky dog and a 12-foot by 12 T-Rex to put on stage. Not only that, I have to put an actor in there somewhere. And that was Buzz Lightyear, and I have to say it all comes to Buzz Lightyear for me as I've grown up, which is to do it on a cruise ship. If anybody's ever taken a cruise and you understand what these actors have to go through, Sybil and I, when we did our first tech, I remember we were like, this is a clown car, what did we do? Because it was enormous. But at the same time, I felt like that journey, I had to talk to amazing people. John Lasseter, first and foremost, drew this character. This is his child. And to be able to talk to someone who created something so brilliant. And then I realized, oh, I don't have to do anything else. He's done the work for me. How do I find out what I do through fabric and foam and things like that? How do I arrive with what I do to make this happen? And then I had the luxury of, they cast a friend of mine as Buzz Lightyear, so I could call him up and ask him to arrive at the vendors, and that we could work around his body and his flexibility. And that was really awesome, to be able to create a costume with an actor who's using his real body instead of just a dummy, which a lot of designers just get a fake dummy to build something on. But it worked because of Noel's participation, and he sometimes didn't get paid to get there to do it. He just wanted to make the best Buzz Lightyear ever. And then I had to work with the set designer to make sure he fit in the rocket to arrive in. And that he had to sing and dance because it's Toy Story the musical. He just didn't arrive in it. But at the same time, I know this is an animated character and everything is fake, but I had to school the actor that you're wearing gauntlets, and you know what this is for, and do you know what these elbow pads are, and you know what the shooter is for. These all have functions. So my job is to give all that information to the actor so that he can play what he is pretending to wear. And that just made him so much better. I had to talk with Cricket about sound because unfortunately Buzz has a giant frickin' helmet on, and we gotta figure out how he's heard in this helmet without him sweating to death and creating a little botanical garden in there. How do we light this? How do we get it off easily? How in the world are they going to be able to maintain this costume that takes 36 minutes to put on, because every piece has to be separated so that if something should go wrong, they can replace that little part, not the whole part. And so I was schooled in how do you effectively make something happen like that? And that was pretty traumatic and dramatic, I should say, for myself. But it's changed me as an artist, because I felt going in, I never was a good collaborator until that show, because it really taught me to open my mind. And I have to tell you, I'm a big fan of Michael Curry. He's a costume designer. He's actually an engineer posing as a costume designer, because he's amazing. He built Lion King, and he's built many more things, but he does all these really cool shows in Vegas now, and much more. He's profound. But what his company does, his design company, is he invites everyone to the table. He has mechanics and engineers. He has all sorts of aspects of design in his building, and they all sit around the table and they ask questions and make a better product. And that is, that is remarkable, that when you don't have an ego in something, you will always create something better. And I try to practice that. And that's basic if we're all at the table, really understanding that we're doing the same, we're all for the same product. And that was pretty remarkable.
Okay, I'm the last one. I actually really thought that project that Anne and Keith and I worked on last year, Margot Vale, was a really special one, because I kind of didn't say much to anybody on that one. And it was one of those, and Elizabeth worked on it too, I forgot, and someone. I just felt that was I remember 10 years ago when you'd work on a production until you got to tech, and then tech okay, stop the train. No one's leaving this room, and you'd work, you'd spend all day long setting all these cues. And I think the technology has made, especially with sound, has made things much, much easier. But I feel like that production, we sort of didn't even have a tech. We would just run the play and sort of add things in. So it was very gentle. And as I get older, I like a gentle tech. I don't like to stop the train and do that. And we introduce elements a little bit at a time. But what I especially liked was each of the designers, every single one of them, had an odd idea that I hadn't thought of at all about an approach to it. I remember I saw Keith's first sketch for that. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I looked at that and I had a heart attack because I was like, how the hell are we going to do that in there? And I don't need anything quite so elaborate. And it ended up being this. Somehow he made that in there, and it was sort of effortless, and yet everyone brought an idea that was distinctly not what I would have done. You know, I like to be surprised and challenged, and yet I thought they all the elements worked really beautifully together.
Shirley Jo, you had a particularly unique collaboration that I'd love for you to share with the audience.
Was that Emmett? Yes, Emmett Till, Emmett Till was a very dramatic, unique experience for me. I was not the original director. So the process that we're talking about, you know, when you get the piece of work and you have 3 or 4 months, like I have a project now, and it's not going to go till October, and so I've got this time to really kind of look at it, massage. I did not have that kind of time. And I grew from that experience. And for those of you who don't know, Ben Bradley was the original director for that. And they were like on their second table read, all right? So, of course, he picked the designers. Everything was in motion. He was on a second table read, and they were waiting for him, and he did not arrive to the theater. And so the stage manager called, and the actors were around, and then she had to go to his home where she discovered that he was murdered. Okay, so now we have the father, director, gone. And so I get a phone call. I had just finished looking at Avatar in the movies, and I'm in the car. And I get a call, and I've been told this, and can you step in? And so, step in, okay. When do you plan to go? Are you delaying the production? No. Okay, so I can give you a day. Okay, and then we'll go into the actors. So I said, okay, give me 2 days. Let me read it. I said, okay. I said, how far along is the process with the designers? They have a concept, but no building has happened, whatever. I said, am I allowed to come in and start clean? And yes, okay. And so read the script, which I was familiar with the script because I had gone to a reading like maybe 3 or 4 years prior to that. And when I saw the reading, I went, oh, this is going to be great. But when I read it again, they had a production where they had 12-person play in Chicago, but to go into the Fountain Theater, you can't put that. So, and Stephen Sachs, who's the artistic director there, said, we'll develop it, but we need for it to be condensed. And it was something that Ifa Baisa wanted to do anyway. So it ended up condensing this play to 5 characters, playing all the roles, male, female, young, old, black, white. And it was done in the spoken word, and it was very lyrical and all that. So, but when I read this version, it was, okay, here we go again. I'm always getting these things, these projects. But Emmett's spirit is coming down and looking at this plight. And the Orishas, which are like the Greek gods, they're from the Yoruba tribe, the Orishas come, and they're guiding him along on this journey. And one of the things I came up with was, I said again, this is space. This is space-time light continuum. This is space. And this is a way station, because he's coming from in the spirit world onto the earth plane. And one of the things in the African American culture and canon is the migrations, and traveling, and trains. And so that I got the image of the train. And because we were moving through light and time, we couldn't have a set. And so what I said was, oh, train station, the way station. So my whole set ended up being suitcases. So suitcases became everything. I had a steamer trunk and everything was coming out of that. And then, you know, when you're in Chicago, you know, when you have the trestles. And so that was the trestles that happened. So that was immediate. It was like I had no time to go, oh, maybe I'll do this, or maybe I'll do that. It was like immediate. But the more important thing is, and you're talking about theater being a collaborative family, this theater town rallied. But here I had to go into a space, and this is what was so unique about this experience, was in real time, there was a murder. And we were going into a piece where Emmett Till was murdered. So, hi, Barbara. So, how does a director go into a space and gather everyone, the team, the design team, and the actors? And so for me, before any of that could happen, there had to be a gathering in the circle for healing. And that was emotionally and spiritually and creatively, it was a very unique, because the team said, okay, what do you want? And I said, okay, way station, blah, 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 blah. And here's the palette, and what do you think? And they went, okay, because the first design was lots of cloth and whatever, and it was like, boom. And there was not a hesitation. It was like, we will support, and here's what we can do. And that was a meeting of everybody gathering in the room, and it was a cellular amoeba thing that grew and beyond expectation. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Well done. So let's take the gloves off and let's hear an anecdote from each of you about when the collaboration did not go well. And perhaps what we can learn, what we fail again, fail better. That idea? You don't have to name names, but if you want to.
We're not talking to me.
No, that's to the panel.
Yeah, I did mine.
Yeah, you're good.
I've only had bad experiences, I will not name names, because I'm very collaborative. When it's usually a very young designer gets stubborn, you know. I have some ideas, you know, but I go into the process, you know. I mean, I think it's the first rule of art. I remember my fifth grade art teacher said, we used to have those, I remember, draw what you see, not what you know. And I just think that's such a fundamental rule of art, you know. You just, what do you see in front of you? And I have lots of ideas. And I'll go in and like, this is a great idea, this is a great idea. And then this is the crucial rule for a director. This was my idea, now I see it, and I was wrong, you know? Let's do something else. So often I find, not often, it's happened pretty rarely, but I sometimes find with young designers, they have an idea, and then it doesn't work. Can we all agree it doesn't work? Let's keep trying it. You know, and sometimes I've had a couple experiences where they have dug their heels in, and it doesn't help anybody, because it's all about that collaboration. And all of us, I mean, that's what's so great about tech, as Elizabeth was saying, is that's where we all get to see it, you know. I often feel like like the first 3 or 4 weeks of, or you know, depending on how long you have, of rehearsal is just, I'm just trying to get it up enough so I can see it. And then when I can see it, then maybe I can know what to do about it. But just to get to see it, and then we can all look at it, and then collaboratively try to figure out what we have here. I don't like someone when they get too stubborn.
And I'll answer that, being a costumer. It's interesting because in the art of theater, when you design for living people. And I design for living people. People wear my art. And often when you get to dream big, that dream gets, whittled away all the way around. And I've learned to put function first in costume design, and then you will be happy when the product is finished. Because each piece tells a story, and I think often enough we don't mentor that through through theater ethic, which is we're all about telling a story, even the clothes and even the shoes and every little bit about it from the prop, and we all know what stands out when we see a show, and we're like, what was that? And we've all had that moment. What is that doing on stage? And so, so there is that. So I have to say that a lot of the things that don't work for me too is when, there isn't a dialogue. Sometimes I do get to tech, and the actor has gone far off into another direction, and I've arrived with the clothes that we've agreed on, and it doesn't work. So I have to be the one that's flexible to change. And often you're not taught about that change, that curve in the road, and how to move around it with ease. And so that is hard.
I am not wearing yellow.
That's right. And at the same time, trying to, find a platform for yourself and say, well, this is why I chose it, and having the opportunity to do that. And I always come to this, and is your stage manager is the conduit to a successful show. And this is someone that is always overlooked, or they're always stolen and gone to better places. And so this person is an artist. This person runs your show. This person finds out who all of you are and is the communicator to your vision. And that person is often overlooked in how to create conversation or time between the designers and the production's finish. And I celebrate this person always, and I've learned to address the stage manager as my friend and cohort and let them know how much we appreciate the efforts of why the show is successful, and it's generally because of your stage manager. And that is those are things that always go wrong for me, is when I have a stage manager who hasn't been taken into the fold and nurtured into that production. And so then it creates, sometimes not a fun environment. So that communication from backstage to front stage, and this person has an enormous job, the biggest job on
and even when it comes to running the show, like I need to be able to say, I want this cue to happen when the emotional shift happens. And if the stage manager hasn't been a part of the process and doesn't understand the show, they'll never know where that moment is, and the cue will always feel clumsy.
That's right. So that is I think that in my experience in theater, that one person is the key to whether or not I'm having a successful time on that show. Is my stage manager communicates with me every day or not, and that will create the problem. So that is the one person that should be the most nurtured person on your production.
Right?
And they should be tipped on those. I have to say.
I guest direct a lot in academia. And one of the things that I have found is in the training in the departments, that discussion is not happening a lot about the adaptability and change. You go through the structuring and the technique, but that conversation about, because sometimes in the process, and you just mentioned this, stuff comes to me in dreams. And so people who work with me, and my actors at a certain point, I'll come to rehearsal and they'll go, did you have another dream? Because if I have a dream, then if something's come to me, I go, oh, we got to, look, I got this idea. We've got to. Yeah. And to be able to adapt to change as actors, but also that part of, in the process, like you were saying, and in the rehearsal process, something may happen in the room that we might have talked in production. I go, oh, I got this great idea. Can we now have the boom instead of the clang? And can we do this? Now, however I said that, go with it. But it is the adaptability. I think collaborate. See, I'm a military brat. And the military teaches the children and their folks the net takeaway that I took was discipline and adaptability, because you may be in third grade on Monday, and then you may be third grade someplace else on Thursday. So you're going into a whole nother environment where there's a whole bunch of people, and you've got to go and scope and scan and discern and be able to blend in with this brown skin.
All right. Scope, scan, and discern.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that is that conversation. So when you come in, and I recently had a production that I did a year ago at UCLA, the graduate students, and it was one of the first times where they gathered all together in a room while we talked, and we had meetings every Monday at 5. And it was like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
See? Yeah. So I was like, yay for me.
I was going to say, like, talking about collaborations and when they work and when they don't, like, you talked about story. And most of the kind of negative experiences in collaboration that I've had is when either we're not all telling the same story, or we're too, or one experience in particular, it was like the director was focused on the plot, and the designers were interested in the story. And so there was a lot of conflict because we wanted, the script was clumsy, but there was a beautiful story to be told. And so as designers, we were interested, particularly lighting and myself, in drawing out the story and kind of allowing the clumsy mechanism to fall away and just get down to the root of what we were telling. The director was more interested in the plot. And, we are in this location, and then we are in this location, and then we are in this location. And it's like, but that's not as important as what's happening in these locations. And I wanted underscoring and to highlight the emotion more than the location, like understanding that to some degree we have to put a location, but there was a more interesting story than there was a plot. But the director didn't see the story because the plot was so kind of convoluted. And so there was a lot of tension as we were trying to draw something deeper out of it.
Was that a new work?
Yeah, yeah. So
that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Developing.
So, but it's kind of, and I think it was just kind of not being, and I think to some extent that as designers we didn't discover the story until into the rehearsal process. It's like you said, I need to get in on my feet to see it. We didn't see it until it was on its feet, and then we said, there's something bigger here. Like there's something really interesting here. But by that point we were in tech, and it was like, well, we have to set our time and place. And it's like, but it's like, let's stop and strip all that away, but we kind of weren't able to get that properly kind of communicated and understand why it was we wanted to do this. So
How did it turn out?
we did what the director wanted. Ultimately, it's his show.
Now,
And
may I ask you?
we let it be.
Would you work
what
with
he
that
wanted.
director again?
Yeah, because I think we all learn from everything we do, and I think a lot of it was a learning process for, I think he was aware of it and not sure how to deal with it, but we learned too that we have to find those things earlier and have those conversations earlier.
May I ask her a question? Yeah. So when would you not work with a director? What would a director have to do to you?
It is getting real up in here.
What would a director have to do to you not to work with them?
I'm a designer, not an engineer. I want to have a creative say in what I'm putting on stage. I do not want to be dictated to. And the director has a vision, and I am there to support that vision, but I like to be able to have conversations about that vision and have input into it and bring, like, there's a reason why you hired me as opposed to the sound designer over here. I can bring something to this project and I want to be able to bring something to it. If I'm not given that opportunity, it's like, then why didn't you just hire an editor? You know, it's like, just hire someone to edit your files, you know.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
if you want someone to just, you know, take
Execute.
a vision and execute it, there's plenty of people to do that, and you can hire the right person. I don't
I'm
fault
just not
anyone
that
for
person.
that.
Yeah, that's just not me, and I don't thrive in that environment, so.
I'm gonna, go ahead.
Oh, I feel like my story about what was unsuccessful sort of relates to a lot of this, because like my personal mantra is that design is dramaturgy, and I say that to myself all the time. I say it out loud all the time. Now you all know it.
It's true, though. It's very
Hashtag LA Stage Talks.
But design is dramaturgy, and that's how we tell the story and what we can do to help the story along. And what happened, it was actually a job that I turned down. Someone came to me and said, we want you to do this project, it's going to be great. So I said, you know, tell me a little bit more about it. It was a fairly well-known piece that had a recent production, a recent production on Broadway that hadn't been seen in a while. And they said, yeah, we think it'd be great. We've already got the stuff for that awesome light cue. No. So I turned that job down because first of all, that's not respectful of the other designer who designed that light cue. It's also not respectful of my work as a designer. And it just tells me that you're not interested in the story that only you can tell. And, you know, it would be one thing if we were making a film for millions of people to see, or doing a tour, or making an elaboration off another work, but this was supposed to be a new version of this for LA, from LA, and when they said that, they just lost me. So.
I want to be respectful of having this particular audience in the space with us and open it up for Q&A. Crystal, come down with the mic. Great. Ready? We'll bring the mic to you. Hold on one second. We'll come here. We're going to go up here, and then we'll come down here to the front row.
Hey.
And if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, Nikki Hevesy, director. Hi. This is for Bart and Shirley Jo, and the designers as well, but I think it's first a director question. As we were talking about things that didn't work, I'm reflecting back on directing and collaborations, and as I'm thinking about times where things didn't work, and a couple things that come to my mind were usually situations where I'm guest directing, whether it's a university or a theater that already has, you know, an in-house staff of people that they're using, and you're brought in to direct. And a couple times that I'm thinking of is where the producer or the production manager or the head of the department, they have an agenda of why they have picked this show. And so now you're going in and they have an idea of what this design is going to be or what the budget is going to be, and you haven't, even though you shared your vision when you were hired, it's when you actually go to execute. Have you ever had situations like that, the tension of how you're working with the designers, where the designers are loyal to the person that pays their regular salary, and you as a director are bringing in something that is creating, you know, problems in that way? Is that making any sense at all?
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess I'm interested. Well, I'm interested in hearing from the designers as well as the director of how you handle a situation like that where the collaboration is challenged, not so much because of the director-designer communication, but because of the loyalties. And, you know, for example, they brought you in to direct a show because they thought it was going to be a bare stage set, and they never told you that, and your vision is not that at all, and they don't want to spend the money, or they don't want to give you access, or they're on jury duty and they're all away, or something like that. So,
Great. Thank you.
So I'm wondering if you could address those dynamics and how you navigate that, and when you walk.
Well, I actually haven't had that an experience like that with design. I definitely have had artistic directors talk to me about casting, and have made their opinions very strongly felt. But interestingly enough, when you work for a larger theater, there are everything is so front-loaded, you know. So the day of rehearsal, oftentimes half the set is built. And Keith and I had, I thought, a very interesting experience on, we were lucky enough to work on the premiere of Donald Margulies' play Shipwrecked, which was down at South Coast Rep. And we had a very interesting experience because Donald has this, I don't know if you guys saw that play, but it's about this kind of man who tells this tall tale about his adventures in the South Seas and Australia and all of these things. And the play builds to this moment in which, and then he's found out to be an imposter. It's based on this true story. And then at the end, then the tale that you've heard the whole play is probably not true. And then he rises to this occasion at the end of the play to prove it one last time. He sort of narrates his own story. And Donald, and the way he's going to prove it is he's going to ride a sea turtle. I remember Donald's stage direction at the end of the play was he mounts the sea turtle and rides it like a bucking bronco around the stage. And it was just like, how the hell are we going to do that? So, you know, I remember we were conceiving it, and then it was like, Donald, how did you picture that exactly? And he said, I didn't, that's your problem, you know? So we came up with this solution, because we used a lot of shadow puppetry in the, there we go. As you can see, a lot of shadow work in it. And so we decided to use, we decided to create, I'm trying to think which version of that show that was.
I think that's SCR.
That's South Coast, yeah. We ended up finishing the because it's like, how are we going to get the seat? So we've been using all these shadows, and so we came up with this idea after much discussion, because Keith had a lot of really good ideas. You'll see why in a second. But we came up with this idea of creating this sort of Harry Houdini-style tank for the end of the play, because it sort of has this, the play had this Victorian kind of feel. And then with this big porthole in it. And then we could see the shadow of this sea. So poor Greg Gitson was hoisted up, you know, flying in the air and then lowered onto this. There was nothing there, but we had the shadow of the sea turtle, and he had announced that he had proved this. And everything was going great until tech, when we loaded it in, and we're trying to find the right height of this. Now, South Coast Rep, the first row is maybe even a little bit lower than that. And the top row of the balcony is extremely high. So we suddenly had this problem. You know, if we were, so that if we, you know, either they couldn't see his head in the front row, or they could see into the tank that nothing was there in the top row. And we kept like trying to figure out what inches of it was. And it was fine. We got the great good fortune of having the Geffen revive this show. Probably, it was like almost the same year, I think. Anyway, and meanwhile, there had been sort of a very simple production of this play at Long Wharf Theater, and in which they had constructed a sort of, I don't even know how you would describe it. Yeah. Anyway, Donald was curious about this idea, but it totally reinterpreted the end of the play. So instead of him proving, aha, I did all this, in a way, it's the same language, but he proves it, but it's clearly he's completely delusional, because he's riding a children's playground ride, you know, with this turtle.
Oh yeah, it wasn't a springy little thing.
Yeah, it was like a springy little thing that like you'd sit and ride or something. I actually never saw pictures of it, but, and so then Keith Mitchell in his genius, you don't have any pictures of the end of that play, do you?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he constructed this beautiful like pop-up, it looked like a pop-up book of like a little stage of a turtle ride with all this Victorian flat scenery moving all around it. And I originally objected to this because I thought, well, it completely changes the interpretation. And if I had listened carefully, collaboratively, as I professed to do earlier, at our very first meeting, we might have gone down a road like that. But I just thought it was a misinterpretation of the play. And maybe it's just the meaning of the play changed as we all worked on it. And that final scene at the Geffen was, I just thought, fantastic.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and it was, And that's actually the single best way to collaborate, is to do a show twice.
You can fix everything the second time.
But I kind of, and then of course the problem with South Coast was that, we knew there was something wrong at the end, but time and money. There was no way to solve it. And I don't even know if we could have gotten that amazing set piece.
But I want to interject here for you, because I know these two and how they work. And sometimes the best way to solve what you're saying is find a partner that works, that gives you answers, and in the way that these two work together, and because I know Keith's work, if you hire Keith, you're going to have endless possibilities. And he has an incredible playful mind. And if you have an idea and you don't know how to get there, you would call this guy to do that. And that's how you get around, well, I don't have anything. Well, who do I go to? Somebody who has everything.
We actually don't have time for a follow-up. I'm sorry. We're going to move on to the next question.
Anyway.
Right here.
Question I have is for cricket, and it is on Bengal Tiger. You started out in Kirk Douglas, then moved on to Taper, ultimately made it to Broadway. Once you reached Broadway with a star, what access did you have, or did you take advantage of certain things that you could have, that you had at your leisure on, with a Broadway show as opposed to the earlier productions?
I think the biggest change that I made was more about the system, and like I mentioned, I went to Derek McLean and said I need all these speakers upstage, and we had a giant back wall with an arch through it that at the Taper and the Kirk Douglas just dominated the set and sat very still. And so it was very easy for me to kind of hide speakers behind it and bounce off the solid back wall and kind of let the sound almost reflect back. When we moved to New York, we made the decision that for the final scene of the show, this enormous 40-foot long, God knows how tall wall would fly out. So I couldn't have speakers hidden behind it because it left. So the biggest change I made, at which, fortunately because I had kind of the time and energy and budget that New York provided, was we redesigned the wall and what the materials of the wall were so that my speakers were actually built directly into the wall. So that instead of kind of having a reflective sound coming back at the audience, I literally had a 40-foot long wall of solid sound coming out, which also accommodated jumping from, the Kirk Douglas, which is 300 some odd seats, to 1,600. I needed a lot more kind of power coming across the stage. But as far as, then content-wise, something very dramatic was happening in this scene change that never existed before. So kind of, again, having the flexibility to kind of reimagine that idea and redesign what, now suddenly the entire shape of the stage changes for the final scene. And so, the shape of the sound needed to change to go with that. I think that was kind of the most dramatic change as far as, access and the star. Robin was phenomenal and actually came to me. Because we had done the show so many times before, you talk about working with sound in rehearsal, we had a full sound system with the full show as it existed before in rehearsal with them. And he came up to me at the designer run when we came to see it again and said that he had a big concern about the sound. And I'm like, because, the star can throw a real wrench in the plans. And he said his concern was that he had learned to respond to the tones, and that he was very worried once he got into the 1,600-seat house instead of this rehearsal, he wouldn't be able to hear the tones anymore. And that he found in his acting and learning the role that he was coming to rely on them, which for me was one of the most wonderful compliments I've ever received, that the actor was finding himself through my sound. And I reassured him that there was an entire wall of speakers directly behind his head, and that he would be hearing it far louder than anybody else. Which fortunately, he was very okay with, because I tend to put sound on the deck, and it's a fine line between supporting the actor and distracting the actor, and it's a fine line that I always have to walk, because it's like I choose to put the sound down with them, but it's them that need to hear it, or otherwise there's no point in being there. So, but I was very lucky that he responded so positively to my idea, because it would have really screwed me up to move those tones into the house and get them away from the star. So,
Great.
yeah.
We'll go here for our last question, and then we're going to have to take the other questions online at LA Stage Times. So.
Hi. My name is Jessica. I work with a lot of devised theater companies and physical theater. So my question is, have you had experience working with devised theater companies? And if so, how does having the performers at that first meet change the collaboration conversation as it continues to evolve throughout the process?
Great, thank you.
What kind of theater companies?
Devised. It's often
Where the company
mean
works
like
on the
ensemble?
material together and creates
the material. Yeah, it usually has a source material, but it's basically new work without a playwright. There's a lot of small ensembles right now in LA doing
Thank you.
that.
I'd like to attempt the first on that, because working with the Actors Gang theater company for years, and really helped develop me as a designer for actors. And also with Bart's company at the Evidence Room too, I feel like I really don't start designing until I know who's cast. There are shows that I have to design blanket costumes for that are, dictate what the character is. And then what I love, and I hope this is what I'm most known for, is taking an actor and developing the character around the actor, and helping the actor discover who or she is through costume design collaboration. Because I really feel like I'm not designing, I'm creating a story with a live human being who needs to show us who these people are. And so I love to meet the cast, or if I'm working with a company that I know who's cast already, I know this actor. The joy for me is getting to create another character for this actor that I know and love, and I know where this person can go or transform. But I think for me, actor first, always in costume design. Once I see that person, and then I know what kind of palette I'm looking for.
Anne can be really pushy in a great way. I remember remember the first version of Flow My Tears that we did,
I love that.
The Philip K. Dick novel. There was this character, this kind of world-weary barfly, and we were upstairs in the Actors Gang, and Anne's like, I'm not going to tell you, I'm just going to put it on. And it was like, I don't know what that thing was. It was like gold lame pajamas with like a dashiki front, and then with this giant afro. And it was like the craziest thing, and Anne's petite, and the afro was as big as you are, and I just couldn't stop laughing, and I didn't know how this actress was going to take this costume, and boy, did she run with that ball.
She did.
I mean, it was transformative to her work on that show.
My favorite part of that story is this woman was a thin, tall, very fair actress that I put an afro on. And she looked at me, and she looked at it, and the next day she called me and she said, I had to talk to my therapist about this.
That is the perfect close to that story.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask each of you just to put a little cherry on the top. And what is your one wish for LA theater?
More mid-size.
That's what I was going to
More mid-size.
More mid-size theaters.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, or just more financial support from the city, the community as a whole, so that we can do more ambitious projects and really take the time to explore, pay your designers in such a way, and pay your cast in such a way that we can spend 3 weeks in tech and still pay our bills.
Or look for sort of alternative ways of working. Can you schedule, if you're doing a small show, it doesn't have a lot of money, can you schedule it in such a way that it's less burdensome? Maybe traditional 10 out of 12s don't work. Maybe there's something better. Yeah.
I'm doing a show right now that tech's from 10 to 1, and it's lovely because I can work around other schedules.
Yeah, because when you get the attention that it needs, that's when it
It's like
comes
I can spend
together.
more time on the project because it doesn't conflict with other things. So.
Keith or Ann, Bart? One wish?
Gosh, I have so many wishes because I choose to do theater in Los Angeles because I love Los Angeles and the resources, and I've worked on all coasts and around the world, and we have something that other people don't have, and that is complicated, and it's complicated here. It's not defined like Broadway, and it's not defined like Chicago has found itself. We have the unique beginnings of a theater culture here, and respect, I think, is number one, because we have to understand that we have people from all sorts of mediums all here, and we need to invite all of those mediums to participate in theater to help it rise. And then we have to educate and mentor and stop the tone that currently exists, which is mismatched in theater here, is that if it's chaotic, change the tone. And then we'll begin to learn how to create better theater ethic here. And it is respect on a financial level. You don't ask anybody else to work for free or for, less than minimum wage. So, and I also tell people, I said, if your show's not ready and you get to that design meeting and the show is not even ready to begin, don't do it until you're ready. Like, be logical about your shows. Like, is this a show really ready to go? Wait, there's no hurry. Don't rush your work. And that's across the board. Don't ask everybody to rush their work. And ask yourself, why are you giving this story to the city and to these people, and how do you make it better?
Final word?
Well, I have to agree with that. I do a lot of television work, and I'm always described as the guy that does the theater thing, and they don't understand what that's all about. But we are we're the stepchild to the Hollywood industry, but I also think it's such an incredible resource, and somehow there could be some sort of synergy between the two. It seems like something that could be a great relationship on some level. And I'd also like to see more devised theater and more happenings. And I got to LA in the 80s, and there used to be a lot more just vibrant street theater, I think, happening. And I know it's still going on. Maybe I haven't found it, but I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah, I just wish there were more people who could make a career in the theater in the city. Just simply that, and more art that blows my mind, because I need some like on a regular basis.
And my one wish is that we continue the conversation. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terence. That was fun.
Yeah.